This is Synchronicity.
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 Welcome to Synchronicity. My guest this week is Justin Hopkins. I know Justin via Yoshino and the wonderful Artist Decoded podcast. I know Justin because he is Yoshino's business partner in No Wave, NOH/Wave. And they're an art collective based in LA, in downtown LA. Justin is friends with a lot of cool people, is an incredibly talented artist in his own right, but also curates and puts on events that are really, really cool. Granted, I've only been to one, and it's the one that I, threw with him, but how much could I have been involved in the production outside of, conceptualizing it, the actual work, making it, beautiful in a physical space, programming wise. Like I've co-produced and been production assistant many moons ago for a lot of different people, and it was awesome what Justin did. And more importantly, his art and the vibe that he curated, I think is probably the most, stunning accomplishment. All right, so I'm singing Justin's praises here, but truthfully, someone that I haven't known for very long, but we've communicated and spoken on the phone, and he's a cool dude. So this conversation is long. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're ready for a long one. I'll make up for last week's where we let Jason go a little bit early. We're going to have Jason back though. But this one's longer because Justin and I really liked bouncing ideas off each other. And I think that's what this is about. And I'd like to make a distinction because I think Justin makes this point in the middle of the episode, and I like to emphasize it as well, that we're not trying to come from the perspective that we have all of the answers. I think that's abundantly clear at this point if you've listened to any other episodes in this podcast, but we have opinions, we have ideas, and throwing those around with someone else who's open-minded and flexible and has some sense of equilibrium related to this stuff is always fun. And that's what I think the value of this episode really turns out. Justin hit me up right after and he's like, I hope I wasn't rambling too much. I'm like, dude, that was amazing. And it was perfect. And it was because you're going to hear a lot of different things swirling around, but there's a common thread through them. So one of those threads, and I won't explicitly say every single one, is this idea of beauty and art and truth and honesty kind of being wrapped up into this essence that artists try to communicate. And I think you're going to hear a lot of other things that are going to pique your interest in here. So yeah, that's this episode. So I'm not going to ramble on too much more. I just want people to know that I really appreciate you tuning in and listening. Do something nice for yourself. Also do something nice for someone close to you. That's another good thing to do, building on last week. We're going to have some cool guests coming up. I already have, right after this intro, I'm going to record a podcast in Woodstock. So that one's out next week. We have stuff going on. Things are good. Cryptocurrency. I'm not going to steal 6 episodes like I did last month or the month before, devoted purely to cryptocurrency, but you can expect to hear a little bit about it. To that end, CryptoSync, the server, Discord server, where we talk about lots of things, not just related to cryptocurrency. Our buddy Chris in there is down in South America doing some amazing stuff with indigenous people and some psychedelics and some indigenous medicine. That's not just ayahuasca. That's not all we're talking about. Some really cool stuff, and some of the conversations that evolve in there really have nothing, overtly to do with cryptocurrency, but you can see how certain types of people congregate. So here's what I'm doing. The original price of CryptoSync was 0.0333 Bitcoin per month. I'm changing that. Bitcoin's going up too. I don't want to get, a prohibitive cost. So now if you join, you get 3-month access for the price of 1 month. If you want to join, you can send me an email or you can join on syncpodcast.com. There's a pop-up that's probably driving enough of you crazy. Here's how you get rid of it. Sign up. But you don't have to. I'm going to take it down soon because we're getting close to 400 members and I want to make sure that we have a nice group of people there. So this is the only place you'll hear about it outside of my personal social media or if you know me personally. So I don't want you to think I'm blasting this out as a money grab to get as many people to sign up. It's really because I think it's a cool community. It's one of my favorite places to go every day. I'm there a lot. I'm not really on Facebook too much. I do still use Twitter. Speaking of Facebook, oh boy. I'm not actually as upset as probably most people are. Congress, hoy. But I mean, listen, this is what we knew Facebook was doing this. Google's doing the same thing. This is their business. Their business is advertising. They sell your data and the metrics they gather on you to advertisers to help coerce you into buying things. Sometimes it's not a bad product. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there's no value. It's just kind of how capitalism works. That said, there's so many other ways to do this. Take a look at Steam. Good call, Noel. In CryptoSync this week, if you're looking at a cryptocurrency, there are ways to do decentralized networks that actually reward people for valuable content. There's other ones, Poet. Anyway, my point is just be aware that this is going on. I find that when people really intuitively or not logically understand that a platform or a system is dead, that's when people move away. I don't think Facebook is going to go bye-bye. They have so much. You guys don't realize they have so much. But that said, it is weird watching Zuckerberg up there emulate human emotions and running sequence 40342-A. But man, stuff happens. But this is all to say that the server for CryptoSync is a place that I actually find to be a wonderful social network, for lack of a better word. So yeah, that's a way you can actually support yourself and the show. Cryptocurrency, it's pretty cool. Anyway, enough about that. I won't take up any more time. Let's get to Justin. How about that? It's a long episode. I don't need to make it longer. Lots of love to you. Lots of love to Justin. Without further ado, here is Justin Hopkins. What's going on, man?
Hey, all sorts, man. As I'm sure is the same with you as well.
Well, I'm excited to hear about a lot of those all sorts.
Me too. Hopefully, it's interesting to you. There's man. It's a wild time. How did you want to handle this? Is it just like a good question. Real conversational?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way. I mean, like the truth is, through our limited personal in-person interactions, I've always had a really good time and liked you, and I'm using this as an opportunity to find out a little bit more, but also just to generally catch up with each other because we haven't spoken in, at length in a little bit, and I know you're always doing really cool shit, and I know the circles you run in are also very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess we can just use it as a get to know you kind of situation.
Yeah.
Are you is this something where I can ask you questions as well?
Yeah.
Or
dude, this isn't an interview. Like I may sound like I'm interviewing at some point, but it's only out of habit for the people who do want to be interviewed. For my friends and stuff, it's literally just a conversation.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I'm into it, man. That's my kind of thing anyways.
Sweet. Well, how about we start? I mean, we're already technically recording as soon as we jump on, but why don't we start with do a brief, I rarely do this, but I just want to do it for my benefit. Give a brief introduction of who is you?
Who is me? Okay. I am Justin Hopkins. I'm an artist based in Los Angeles, California, co-founder and art director of No Wave with you, our mutual friend, Yoshino.
Yeah.
Who is the other co-founder and executive producer. So together and with the help of our amazing roster of artists, we are No Wave.
Yeah, and that's how I met you.
That is how you met me. Through that event, Mindwave, like was that like a year ago now?
I think it was it a year or 2 years?
Not 2 years, because we just celebrated our first year anniversary in February.
Holy shit. The show you how my brain is working. It feels like 2 years.
Well, I think you're like under you're under that like time stretching of like of fatherhood.
Holy shit! Wait,
I think things change for you. Yeah, I
God.
just got my marriage license yesterday, so it's very
congrats!
much
That's super
in the
fun.
future.
That's super fun.
It's a life-changing fun, indeed.
You have no idea, but it is really awesome. I think I've been married 4 years now. So I'll tell you a funny story, not to glom over our conversation about you. I lost my wedding ring on Friday. It fell down a grate, and I had to like basically get the whole neighborhood of where I lost it to help me. It was right outside the daycare of Eli's daycare.
Dang.
Dude, I had to have like 10 people, get the grate off. I was wading through muck to get it, but I got it back. But I will tell you, it is a good microcosm of what marriage is. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And it's people don't tell you. People can't fully relay what it is, but you're going to fucking love it, dude. I know I haven't met your lovely wife to be, but I know your perspective and just kind of who you are as a person. And I think you're really going to like it.
Oh, I have no doubt. You would love her. She's so up your alley. It's unbelievable.
You were telling me.
Yeah, she's incredible. And real quick side note, just because of for sake of synchronicity and all of that, you said that happened on Friday. I actually picked up my wedding ring, or my wedding band that on Friday as well.
How about that?
So, how about that? We both have anecdotes, Friday-based, ring-based anecdotes.
So okay, let's back it up. Let's start at No Wave, because that's where we got introduced through our mutual friend Yoshino.
Yep.
You're also doing yourself a tremendous disservice by not leading with it. You're a very accomplished and amazing artist in your own right. So not only a founder of a collective, but incredibly talented. And I remember you saying you have a lineage of artists in your family. So I think like what was most impressive to me about what we did in LA was probably really what you guys did. But outside of the actual production of the event, the vibe and the community of people that you kind of, fostered and encouraged there was really like one of the most impressive things I've come across. And I've gone through a lot of different communities through my relatively short life. So I know that there's something that's very substantial underneath the surface, which I'm excited for delving into. But I mean, like, how did you get into like what pulled you towards the artistic path?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's just it's almost like a birthright in a weird way. I don't like thinking things like that, except I'm incredibly blessed in a way to be born into a family of artists and was given that gift by my parents. And then I lived in a household of working professional artists, like successful working professional artists. So yeah, there's always the support there. And also it wasn't a weird lifestyle. It wasn't something that was looked down upon, or like, this is just a phase you're going through in order to go and try to study medicine. It was just, it's like, this is a viable career path. You can have a healthy lifestyle, have a family, live a successful, prosperous life while still being an artist. I think a lot of people get hung up, even if they are born with the gift, the genetic gift or the vision or whatever it is. Yeah. Early on, they lose that because it's pounded out of them by the iron fist of logic and rationale, so, they don't foster that their imagination. Where I never ran into that. My imagination was always praised, and I think that's a really important thing. Yeah. So it's my dad was back in the day like a really famous illustrator. He's probably best known for doing the poster for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Styx album covers and Oingo Boingo album covers, and all these big movie posters for like The Abyss and things like that. Like, he was a big like Hollywood illustrator.
I didn't know he did The Abyss. That's cool.
Yeah. He did The Abyss and all kinds of big movies back in the day, and a lot of, like, the posters that Drew Struzan didn't do, who's like another incredibly notable artist of that time. And my mom, when I was young, she was just my mom, and then into her 30s, she started studying basketry, and because she had this unbelievably intense one of a kind talent. She quickly mastered the like traditional basketry style, started teaching it, and then within a matter of like 5 years was exhibiting worldwide and in museums all over the world now.
That's awesome. Oh my God.
Yeah, so I've seen it. Like, my dad was born with the gift and he did it his whole life, and then I saw my mom find it later on in life and create a success for herself. So I have two like totally rare examples of like of the art life taking hold of you.
Yeah, you have some interesting karma, my friend. You must have done some really good stuff.
Or just someone had to be born into such luck, and it just happened to be me. Maybe not fortune, but certainly the culture I was born into, being surrounded by the arts, was something I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, that's amazing, dude. That's really cool. I mean, I think a lot of people, when they're either thrust or think that they have some artistic, I mean, just to be clear, I think everyone does, but people who really view it as potentially either a viable, if not lucrative endeavor, have to deal with so much cultural pushback to begin with, but their family as well. Like, I know a lot of people who are very, very, very talented who, if, given a different, family perspective, could have done, with some support, could have done some amazing things, but to be born into it. And then also not to have that be like, I imagine it wasn't an environment where you were forced to be an artist. You were allowed to foster and grow your own kind of, impressions of why it was something valuable to do.
Yeah, I just thought my dad was the coolest motherfucker on the planet. So I would just hang out with him, and like I would go through all his art books, and I had a little drafting table next to his drafting table, little easel next to his. I just was kind of modeling myself after this guy, and he was just and continues to be an amazing person, more than just like a really respected artist. He's a hell of a guy, and everybody who's met him will say the same thing. So
yeah, that's awesome.
It was just a real strong father figure, not a forced into it, just like this is the pinnacle of who you can be as a person. So I just modeled myself in that way, So how
did you start like doing, like when's like the earliest or an earlier memory you have of like, being like, I like to do art. This is something I want to do. Not just, maybe you did it because your dad was the role model, but then when you kind of started grokking like what this potentially could be.
I've always been, I think it's just it was just really natural to me, Again, like I didn't see it as like as something that was odd, or it was always something that gave me some kind of social and currency, even in school. Like I'd be quiet and shy and wasn't really too good at speaking to my peers, but I could draw pictures that brought them to me, so it was something that like I just got like instant gratification out of. Like I was always one of the better drawers in the class, and and it was kind of like a magic trick for the other kids to see it. So that was nice, but I didn't really feel like I'm an artist until, and this is still really early, but till I was 10 years old. I drew a picture of a picture of a cheetah, and then that's what actually got my dad's attention. And then I started pretty heavy training for a while when I was going up into high school. From 10 years old up into high school, I actually became a professional illustrator at 14.
Wow.
Doing jobs my dad didn't have time to do, for like Costco, and started showing at 12 and all these things, because I was just like, I finally got my dad's attention for like, oh wow, my kids, maybe it's not that I'm just a proud father, it's that maybe my son's actually got some talent. And so he started training me for, it's like, oh, we can do this, you can do this, and just like basically the joy of experimentation,
Yeah.
And,
and is that?
Yeah, I guess 10 years old.
That's so. I mean, that's fascinating that you're doing work at a young age for companies that your dad is like, I don't have time for this. I'll just put my incredibly talented, gifted son on these projects.
Well, I didn't realize how, I guess maybe had an inkling how rare that was at the time, because it was a weird kind of job to have. But
yeah.
but again, in my household, it's like that was just always around. Like that was what my dad did all the time, and he worked from home, so I saw it all the time.
So let me ask you this: that's the career and professional aspect of being an artist, which I think a lot of people find interesting. But what have you noticed walking the artist's path, for lack of a better term, to be kind of hokey about it? Like, what are some of the subtle things that you've experienced through art as a medium? Because obviously, it's one thing when we look at something and go, oh yeah, that's pretty, or that makes me feel this, or that song makes me feel this. But we know as people who create this stuff and pull it out of, whether it's our imaginations or drawing on something, but out of the ether often, what's kind of been your experience, dealing with that aspect of art?
You mean like the conception of it, or like the creative compulsion?
Yes, both of those things. Both of them, actually.
Oh, okay, so like actually piggybacking on something you said a little bit ago, that everybody has art, and it can be an art, or you said something to the effect that people have art in them, or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I agree and disagree with that 100%. So I know that's a strange statement, but I think 100% of people have the creative spark. Like that is what makes humankind what it is. Creativity is just, to me, just like the adaptive intelligence that allows us to be like survival machines.
Sure.
Really. But being an artist is a different thing, because that comes with the compulsion to direct that in a channel towards something that is it all comes from the compulsion of it, really, like, because that like begets the hard work, which begets the skill, which creates the drive, which not everybody has that. And that's what separates artists from people who are the most creative physicians, most creative, like I would say, like someone who's a waiter or something like that can be incredibly like brilliant creative thinkers, but I'm not talking down on waiters at all.
Of course, I get it.
But like but they're able to drive it in a certain way that is beneficial in a different way. It doesn't have the same compulsion to make these objects that an artist has, and I think that's really all it takes to become an artist. But that's also an incredibly rare, I won't call it a gift, because it's really fucking frustrating. Most of the time, No, it's like you can almost align it with a mental illness in a way that, like, if you don't do this thing, you will start deteriorating as a person.
Okay,
in a way.
Let's talk about this, because this is something that I think has taken me over 30 years to actually come to terms with. That what you're referring to as a compulsion, and something that can actually negatively impact one's life if they don't do it, has been my experience. And it took me a pretty long time to figure out that was the case. I was like, why do I just feel so, like, I was legitimately losing my mind over the past like 3 or 4 months, because I shifted from having a decent amount of time and space to flex my creative muscles to taking care of Eli all the time. And I literally started cracking up, like hitting nervous breakdown points where I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So I totally know what you're talking about. I mean, I'd love to talk about that compulsion, or what you refer to as compulsion, more and probe it, because I think it's one of the most interesting things that we can look at, because it does feel that something that's a little pre-speech, being able to communicate totally effectively, but shedding as much light on it as we can. I mean, see, here's what I say about the agreeing and disagreeing. I agree that everyone has the creative spark. I definitely think that. I think more people than those who realize it have that same compulsion, but are just either suppressing it or buying into other narratives about what is going on in life to actually give it the credence to actually kind of, because I mean, I don't know, we could posit it like this. Do we think the world and society and culture is running at like optimum performance? No, probably not.
No, I totally understand what you're saying too. And I think, and that again comes back to me for being my initial anecdote about being grateful for like the household I was brought into, to where the things I had were kind of unbridled, and that was a natural genetic thing, and also, again, like the compulsion, it I think is there in more people. I won't say everybody, because I know that's not true,
Sure.
But like, and more people than that are actually artists,
Right.
definitely have something that they are put here. Like you can say put here to do. You could say just have this certain sequence or just makeup outside of their control that best suits them to something that is a perpetual joy making machine or something like that.
Right.
But maybe that's not in the quote unquote arts. Maybe that's in like people find out late in life that all they really want to do is go out in the community and help people. And they find out this is the most efficient way. And that's a compulsion. That's, the whole following your bliss thing,
Yeah. I'd be curious to hear what your mom would say about finding the basket weaving and making later in life as a passion, or not even a passion, but like a skill. And I imagine that must have felt like a compulsion to ascend as quickly as she did. It's so interesting.
For sure. She's the genius of the family, for sure.
The women usually are.
Yeah. She discovered that, it was like it. And it was a thing that like, that's a perfect example to your point that, she didn't know that existed.
Right.
And when, you always think about like, maybe the passion or the thing I'm meant to do is just something I will never discover. And that's a tragedy a lot of people have to deal with.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I've thought about a lot. It's like, maybe I'm like meant to be the best 16th century marble sculptor of all time.
You should do it. Start trying.
It just like, what comes with that is the culture of it too. Maybe like this art form is not as relevant now, so I can't reach as many people. And, you just think like, and the tools aren't the same. The culture of like apprenticeship isn't the same. All these things have to play into what makes something valuable.
Right.
And you just think, oh man, maybe just by like some accident of like whatever this like, kind of ongoing mechanism, you call it God or some kind of like karmic placement, like just was off by a fraction. I landed 300 years too late.
That's interesting.
I think about that sometimes.
Well, I'd be curious here because now we're dovetailing into something that I think is probably like what the root of this show tends to get to.
And I'm really sorry about the tangency, but
no, my God, this is what these conversations are what I dream of for this type of stuff, man. What, are you kidding me? So your wife does some very interesting things, and I don't want to go too much in, and I'd love to have her on at some point if she's up for it, because I want to find out.
Oh yeah.
More. But would you consider yourself, or like, you strike me as both someone who is very practical and logical and reasonable, but you also seem to have a pretty clear mystical undertone as well. But where would you describe yourself kind of on this spectrum of, like, let's say scientific materialism is at one end. I certainly don't think you're there. And then totally woo new age, we're just ethereal vapor beings living in a dream at the other end. Where are you falling on that spectrum currently?
Well, it's like, I think I tend to be really philosophical more than mystical in a way. And I think any reasonable person, really, truly reasonable person, a really, truly skeptical person,
right,
will understand like the tremendous gaps in his knowledge or her knowledge, and that those gaps can be filled with mystery, and that can be beautiful. And beauty is really what draws me. I find beauty in scientific like understanding of people. Well, in science always comes from observing nature and the mysteries of nature. So I like that, and like science is really just like a strategy in order to understand the natural world.
Great.
So I love, there's so much beauty in that. There's fractal geometry that is very science and math based, but it comes from observing nature and understanding the mysteries of it. And there are certain mysteries that are just gonna be mysteries because the way that we are constructed, we are not able to see the patterns that other animals see, other entities or forces feel.
Right.
And to understand your humanness and have humility in the face of mysteries is really what mysticism comes from in my mind.
Yes.
And like, or faith or belief or religion all comes from the humility of realizing your humanness in the face of a much larger force. And again, you can call that God, you can call it just like cosmic physical forces. There's both of these things can be equally true based on how you calibrate your sense of perspective. But for me, I am a non-religious, skeptical, observant person, or try to be observant. and while doing those things, you notice things that you can't understand and that nobody can. And there's a beauty in that, and I try to celebrate that beauty. Does that make any sense?
It makes a tremendous amount of sense. Is maybe one of the most coherent and cogent ways of describing something I think a lot of us kind of intuitively resonate with, which is, yeah, man, like we don't have all the answers, but we found something that seems to make sense more often than not, and it doesn't make us feel like shitty people as we're living that. So yes, what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, and I love the pursuit of knowledge and beauty, and the pursuit of knowledge in itself is beautiful, and that really is my job, is the pursuit of that. So I'm fine-tuned to try to receive all those different aspects of what is beauty, and beauty is, when people really break it down, is honesty and truth. You know, so that's really what beauty is.
You seem like you're a Plato fan.
I like Plato a lot. I like Hegel a lot. I like Kierkegaard a lot. I like Feuerbach a lot. I like all those. I love Nietzsche a lot.
Yeah.
I love all that stuff.
What about the Eastern stuff?
I love the Eastern stuff. You know, like I love Buddhism. I've read the entire Bible. I was really obsessed with philosophy and religion when I was growing up. My dad's Christian, so my mom's like like kind of like a more Unitarian, not Unitarian, but like I'd say agnostic with sides of Buddhism in her. So I came from a pretty mixed bag of philosophies anyways, in addition to the artistic background.
So how does that filter through? I think this is amazing, by the way. And it explains a lot,
thanks.
I think, on why we just kind of naturally get along together, because we're sharing similar outlooks on the world.
Cool.
How does this fit into things that fall into the mysterious category you were referring to, when you have those occurrences in everyday life that kind of transcend the way things that, you know, at least culturally or societally or even maybe empirically we've been told they exist? How do you filter all that through?
I'm sorry, you might need to give me an example really quick, so I really am
of course.
clear on what your question is.
So let's say it's like a synchronicity or something. So we're talking about something that, or precognition, you know, you had some idea that this person was going to do something, you know, get in touch with you for some momentous thing and it happens. Or, you know, for instance, we were talking about, I don't think it's a cute example, but the wedding thing. We both actually dealt with retrieving and picking up rings in different ways. Where does that mysterious kind of aspect or those things fall into play? How do you process that? You know, what's your narrative or what's your outlook on that?
Oh, man. Well, I think there's a lot of different things going on there. There's like, it could be the fact that we are both men growing up in America at a certain age. And, you know, you could break it down to like, you know, like coincidence. You could say that. Like, I'm not opposed to that being the case. Like, I'm not a guy who's against random chance. I think that's just as beautiful as some cosmic echo. You know, I think both of those are viable. I think that like synchronicities and things like that can come down to a lot of things. Like I notice synchronicity in my life a lot, or I would say maybe manifestation and like observation as a skill, developing my imagination, which some other people would call your third eye. It's all language, you know, it's like whatever your language is. And like my third eye or my imagination has been accumulating data for so long and aware that it's accumulating data for so long that you can kind of perceive into what are possibly future conclusions and then shift your life towards that in a way. And then make it so those chances line up more and more with what you want out of life. It's like, it's not exactly has anything to do with the ring thing, but has more to do with like Austin Osman Spare, who's like the chaos magician who I got a lot out of in the sense that like he would do these rituals, and because he placed so much intention behind each ritual, it didn't matter what ritual it was, because all of a sudden you're focusing your attention. So all of a sudden you narrow down your potential realities in front of you, and then you direct the force of your mind and your body towards these things, and all of a sudden the things you want become more and more available to you because you've blocked out all these opposite, like other kind of like abstract distractions in a way,
like noise, for lack of a better word, when you're trying to focus on something.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, like the rise of ritual and practice and mindfulness in the midst of a chaotic world is, I think, is helping people kind of realize that more and more. At least at this, it goes in kind of waves and surges. But I would say that we are in a time right now where people are developing those skills again.
Yeah, it seems. Let's not to divert too much, but what do you think is going on right now? It seems to me maybe we're all just kind of, collectively living the illusion of central position, but it seems pretty fucking crazy. Just like,
well, yeah. Well, I think it seems really certain aspects of it seem really clear, in the way that I was just having this conversation with our friend Yoshino and also my future wife about like how I was just noticing these strange things that are happening, and I think in 10 years from now it'll be really obvious, and there'll be some really incredible think piece on the fact that, wow, isn't it strange that during 2017 and probably 2016 to 2018, the biggest trends in the world were stress relief, and especially through children, because they are the most sponge of anybody. They don't have these barriers built up by adulthood. So what are the kids interested in? The kids are interested in fidget spinners. The kids are into making slime and things that are oddly satisfying, or cutting soaps, things that are both based on relieving stress and the tactile use of your own body parts to create this sense of like activating your senses in a way that is still very much ingrained in people, because they're bombarded by digital chaos and socioeconomic chaos. As that we can go really deep into that, because that's a will to power. That's a way of confusion, is a way of overpowering masses and things like that. But but you'll notice that. You'll notice as you when you're at Whole Foods or wherever the fuck, even Rite Aid or Vons, you will notice cover of Time magazine, mindfulness, the rise of mindfulness, all these things that are about canceling out noise and using your body to do so, using ingrained like ancient physiological technologies in order to cancel noise. So I think there's a lot of noise, and as a reaction to that, our bodies will kind of react, and then as a collection of bodies, culture will react. But it's hard to see that while you're in it.
I think that's really.
But yeah, so that's. I don't know if that answered your question, but I was trying to say something.
No, I get it, because it is something that it's this idea of, like, I often use it with social media, where we don't have the ability to really process how quickly technology and this web of consciousness that we're kind of overlaying everything, and beginning physical things as well now, like, the Internet of Things, and a lot of the things related to cryptocurrency are going into this area. It does seem like we're losing the ability to quickly reflect or take a step back and say, hey, what's happening as a culture? But individually, we're feeling compelled to do this. And now it feels like there is not necessarily a pullback, but this desire to kind of integrate or at least process what's going on. So it does seem like these skills are being kind of evoked, for lack of a better term, by this kind of uncomfortableness, I think, for a lot of people. And that's truthfully how I would describe, I don't think a lot of people wake up every day in this day and age thinking they know exactly what's going to happen that next day. And I don't know that people ever really did. Maybe we were just younger and it seems simpler, but it certainly feels like at the rate that we're being able to plug into each other, just in terms of connectivity, I mean, we haven't had how are we going to have a long-term study on the impacts of consciousness, now being interlaced in a way heretofore that's never been, like, explicitly, shown? Like, how do we analyze that, and what's going to come out of that? So yeah, I mean, that's what it feels like we're into. What is the kind of mystical, mystery aspect of you think when it comes to this day and age?
Oh God, weird question. Because it's like it's the mist. I mean, It's hard to say. All I know is that there's a lot of I would say just general friction, and I think what's happening. This is not the mystical side of me. This is the logical side of me. But it'll get to the mystical side of me if that is a side of me. I'm not entirely sure it is. You know? I think it's kind of all the same side. There's a friction that's being presented to people, and I don't think people have ever really had the ability to reflect on their own times. Now, I mean, not on the whole. I honestly think that's what the artists are for. That really is the job of the artist, is to reflect on what's going on and ask questions more than give answers, because the questions can provide you with a variety of answers based on your backgrounds and your social upbringing and stuff like that. So questions are more important for the culture than answers in a way, because then you have the variety of answers to be given in your own mind, and that can give way to knowledge, which gives way to wisdom, and which gives way to inspiration. Say. So maybe that's more. That's again like the compulsion for asking those questions in a way that's you act as a channel to provide these things. That's what makes an artist versus someone who's on almost on a like a craftsmanship level, like the best cabinet maker in the world.
So this, I like this analogy, because this further is just kind of a concept or something I like to think about. I don't know how often I think about it, but I like the concept of that. Artists are just like shamans in a lot of different ways. And I think people who have strong artistic proclivities, or the compulsion, as you put it, are doing a very similar thing to what a shaman may do. They may know that, or they may not know that, but what it is it's a communication with the world that's not seen, at least by other people around them. And then, as you said, being a channel, or, some vessel for this thing to be, pushed through. And it's not like it comes through pure. It's pushed through your particular perspectives, your karma, your whatever it is. And it creates something that people can then look at, then evoke something that resonates with them. Hopefully not necessarily the same exact feeling, but that nonetheless stirs something that's in them already, which to me kind of completes this interconnected meme that I am fond of recognizing in other, philosophies, religions, thinkers, which it really does to me as time goes on seem like this web of interconnectedness becomes less of a concept and more of just like a fundamental, reality that we live in. That's how I, factor in, going back to the synchronicity stuff. To me, that it's just, that's all it is. It's just for a minute, we see just how interconnected this is, and just how, this doesn't work how we filter it down through our particular, viewpoints. Let me ask you this, not to shift gears too abruptly. Psychedelics. You've done psychedelics?
Yep. Of course. But I would really like to.
Yes.
So there, you said a lot right there.
I know.
And I was going through it. We started with the shamanism part, which is actually something my friend Sergio says all the time, a fellow artist who in New York, and he Sergio Barale, very good friend of mine, and he always says that our artists are shamans, and shamans are artists. In the past, that's really what they are. I don't know that I fully agree with that, and it could be my discomfort of like taking that responsibility, because I'm always like a little skeptical of people who say they're shamans, because I think there's a little weightiness to it that I don't really trust. So I won't.
Okay,
I won't take that on. But
let me clarify.
But I do have. Yeah. I have one more thing to say.
Yeah.
And that is that, like, when you were saying about like creating all this interconnectedness, I've always seen at least what I try to do, whether it be in music or fine arts, visual arts, film, or whatever, is the thing is like these pieces of art are a psychic portal between people.
Yes.
A collaboration with the viewer where they can project onto it. And also the object itself, if it is an object that you make, is just the proof of an idea. And the idea is the culmination of thoughts and culture and all these different factors that create this thing. And all the culture and factors are not just in you, but outside of you as well. So that's where the channel comes in. You're literally channeling like a funnel these outside influences into this object.
Yes.
So there you go. Feel free to shift gears.
No. Now this is, I really like that you said that too, because that to me is kind of what art is. It is that energy being kind of like shaped in a way that's presented to other people, whether it's like you said, visual or audio, and obviously they play differently in time and temporal time.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
no, totally, man. I completely get it. Well, I brought up psychedelics and the shaman thing too. I would let me clarify when I say that shaman is a loaded word right now. A lot of people will think of
Right.
curanderos, ayahuasqueros, this whole South American, you're going to go to your shaman and take ayahuasca. There's a whole other, kind of cultural appropriation aspect of shamanism. What I'm referring to as shamanism is the, traditional sense, regardless of culture, of someone who traditionally plays the role of being in contact with a spirit world, whatever you want to call it, some ethereal thing that maybe
Sure.
everyone has access to, but goes pretty much over the edge, like over the fucking edge, where maybe it manifests as a compulsion to communicate this to other people or just do it, maybe not even show it to anyone, but you've gone to this place and have been so profoundly affected by it that you then feel compelled to communicate it. And the reason I brought up psychedelics as much of a non sequitur as it may have seemed is because that is something that seems to be a similar thread is found in psychedelics. Whether you consider yourself an artist or not, you have this experience where it's like, oh shit, oh fuck,
Yeah.
it's not the way I thought it was. So that's why I kind of draw those similarities just to thread that all together. But I don't mean like shaman, like I'm some special person, I do this. I mean shaman in the sense like you've gotten in contact with something and are now doing your best to communicate it, in a way that's valuable, hopefully, to the culture.
Yeah. Oh, okay. In that way, yes, I totally agree with that. I just don't, I have a certain amount of like discomfort with like trying to speak on things I don't know much about that have cultural ties,
Totally. Understandable.
But no, I don't find your segue into psychedelics to be is too much like out of this whole, it's completely part of it. And I think more than anything, it's like, at least for me, I've only done mushrooms, and I know people do mushrooms for a lot of different reasons. I don't see that as like a drug of any kind. I see it as like as an educational device.
Yeah.
And really, what I've realized about psychedelics is the internal world map inside your brain. Once you can kind of see all the corners of it that you didn't know existed, is very much like the exterior world outside of you, and there's a lot of the same shapes. And I recommend all my friends who maybe haven't tried psychedelics, who have this creative force. Like I recommend doing it. I mean, as long as you don't. I mean, I don't know enough about like mental illness and stuff like that to recommend it to everyone. But for someone who's doesn't have a history of that and like hits a block or something, I highly recommend it as a way to keep that channel clean, pure, and wider to more influences. Because what it did for me, the first time I did it, let's just say this is a fictitious version.
Yeah, of course. That's what I was going to say.
This is a fictional version of the characters. All their names have been changed. So like I went up to, let's say, upstate New York, somebody's place up there. Like it's just all artists all around, Who knows what everybody else is doing, but I use this opportunity to experiment with psychedelic mushrooms. I had been holding on to them for a long time, and I had no idea really what was coming, but I had been pretty, aside from like drinking socially and like occasionally smoking marijuana to fall asleep, I was really not interested in drugs of any kind.
Sure.
So breaking down the idea of what psychedelics were, so many of the people I respect, whether it be neuroscientists, mystics, or artists, or philosophers, it's all kind of coming together in the sense that like everybody generally holds this thing, whatever it is, in high regard.
Yeah.
So what I noticed when I did it out there was the complete obliteration of what I thought was my reality, in the sense that it fucked up my senses. Like it recalibrated my senses in such a way that just that changed my whole sense of what reality could be.
Right.
And that there's a more sophisticated truth that underlies this thing that you can see, you know, like, and you can realize that just by realizing like birds see something completely different than you, like really functionally, they see something completely different than you, but actually realizing that in a real deep sense, like you experiencing it. Yeah. Or experiencing something that could at least be an analog for that, you know?
Right.
Like your hearing is turned all the way up, your vision is turned all the way up. And if you are able to keep your fear levels down and just act as like a passenger or tourist through this different experience, you can learn a lot about like how the interconnectedness of things. If you look at everything just vibrating around you and that you are also vibrating, and you lose that sense of like whatever that sense is that keeps your body intact by differentiating you from the table, that no longer is functioning in the same way. Right. And you realize you can have empathy for an object much like you did as a child when I'd feel bad for a bag of cookies because no one wanted to eat it, so I'd eat it. Like you can feel empathy in that way for.
And what's interesting is you can still remember that now. That's a very interesting thing too. It was an extremely pivotal time in my life where I was incredibly sensitive, you know? Yeah.
And then just kind of realizing, synchronicities and patterns that maybe aren't as readily available because of the amount of noise. Again, the amount of noise. And just like you have to be forced into, because you can't, like the thing about psychedelics, and people often bring up like, well, if they haven't done psychedelics, it's like, isn't it like, can't you get there with meditation? Yeah. And I always think like, perhaps, like, I don't think so, because the thing about psychedelics is like you find yourself on a new plateau of things you haven't seen before. So how could you start enacting those things unless you're forced into the situation to experience something you've never experienced before? Because I think even in meditation, at least in my experience, it's still coming from the inside, and you can become aware of tremendous inner truths, but being forced into them, like against your will almost, is a different kind of jarring experience. And then once you have that experience, then you can meditate on that and develop that further, you know? That's in my mind.
That's really interesting. I mean, I have two thoughts about that. One is that the experience of meditating is something that I think, you know, some of the things I hear about longtime meditators, or even the stories we hear about ancient ones, is, you know, you can do some pretty wild shit, disassociate from your body, you know, live entire different lives, you know, things that maybe we're not grokking as I'm an impatient meditator. I rarely meditate. I do a lot of other things, you know, that was quote unquote spiritual, or to get me in tune. But I will say this, I mean, one of the benefits of psychedelics, I think, not that one is better than the other, is that if you have your regular daily experience, that's a type of mindfulness, whether we're aware of it or not. When we wake up every day, we're doing a mindfulness thing. We're reinforcing, if we don't pay attention, just, you know, habitual habits that we'll do throughout the day, brush our teeth, do this, got to go to work, got to make money, whatever they are. But that's what we're paying attention to. If you have an experience that knocks you out of that, but you still have the reference point of that original mindfulness of what life is actually like, your regular life, that fucks with enough people that it's like, oh shit, maybe this thing that I've been thinking is what life is, and my perspective is just one perspective out of potentially infinite perspectives, or many different ones just situationally that I can recognize during a psychedelic experience. So I do think that kind of bridge that psychedelics provides is something that's very useful for a lot of people. I will say that not everyone comes away with the same conclusion. I was talking about this, I forget with who, just recently, that one of the first things that kind of blew my mind about the psychedelic scene is I was on Reddit, like, I don't know, 7 years ago or something, 6 years ago, and there was the Psychonaut forum, and I just went on there to see what was going on, and there were these vitriolic arguments between people about dosages and experiences and the one truth of reality. I'm like, how the fuck did these people like miss this? Like, they're literally on the internet arguing about a psychedelic experience, about whose is right. Like, did they miss the part where your ego gets destroyed and you realize it doesn't fucking matter who thinks they're right in this? And it proved to me that it's not like it's a one size fits all, but that experience of being jarred out of your reality really does seem to have a concrete, effect for people. Have you microdosed by chance?
I haven't. Like I'm interested and uninterested in that at the same time. You were onto something and said a bunch of interesting stuff I wanted to piggyback on, and now it's just eluding me. As you're so quick with accumulating ideas and conversational starters.
I know,
but no, it's good. It's really, really good. What was I thinking though? Really quick, and then I'm gonna get to that microdose.
Yeah.
So like, shit, did I lose it again? Okay. So this is a complex idea for me. So like meditation and psychedelics, both very, very important things to have in tandem, but I do think they are fundamentally different. And I'm just going to preface this by saying, I don't know shit. I'm not an expert on anything at all, ever. And I think if more people said that,
I know.
The world would be a better, more insightful place.
I know. I couldn't agree.
I don't know. I don't know shit. But what I do think is that meditation, you're still like, you can experience different lives. You can be more connected with who you are in nature and all these things by being aware of things. Yes, but that's still based on reference points that is familiar to you. Whereas when, at least for me, my personal experience with psychedelics, like I said, turned my senses on so high that there was things that I realized that I had no idea existed and that I would have no reference point of. It's like seeing a color you've never seen for the first time and trying to paint that, even though no one else can see it. It's like it's something that you experienced that you had no idea existed, and then you can take that experience now and put it into your meditation, and then become more connected from there. It's like let's say a multi-step process in human betterment, and then as a result, cultural betterment. Anyways, microdosing. Well, I've not done it, so I can't speak to it too much, but I am interested.
To that effect, let me connect those two dots that you eloquently laid out there. I agree. I mean, I think that one of the reasons that psychedelics as a meme or as a cultural mechanism are so prolific right now, especially in the artistic, but obviously going outside of those realms, is because it gives us that contact, that kind of shamanistic contact with these different layers of reality that people respond to naturally, that they're not being coerced into respond to, like marketing is apt to do, in our culture, which is where we're being convinced that this is something we need to do. Well, this will get us this, which is kind of an antidote and a natural rebalancing of kind of this capitalistic, consumeristic society. So I don't find it surprising that psychedelic, something is jarring, maybe is, the analogy I'd give is a spiritual lesson. It's like kind of getting slapped in the face with something like a shoe, what I mean? Like this isn't like a light thing. You're not maybe going to have some effects. If you take 900 micrograms of acid, you're going to trip. You take 5 grams of mushrooms, you're going to trip. You're going to have an experience, pleasant or not, guaranteed. Yeah. So I don't find it surprising. So the microdosing thing I connect is because I personally, mushrooms microdosing, I've had mixed results. I didn't find it a sustainable regimen that I could, regularly do to predictable results. I think if I was doing kind of like an artistic retreat and had like a month uninterrupted, that would be pretty amazing. But I also think maybe taking mushrooms, a couple of times a week for over a month would be an amazing thing for art as well. That said, LSD microdosing, I found to be done in a regimen over the course of 2 months, 3 months. That has been a profound talk about a tool that kind of integrates, I think, some of these much needed kind of qualities of reflection, awareness, non-judgment. Having those kind of naturally be those bridges into your life really does seem to have some truth to me. It's been my direct experience, and I've both, played with it on and off for large cycles of time. And I'm certainly starting to fall into the camp where I think this is a useful thing. And I bring it up just to connect all of this is because I think culturally, societally, mystically, whatever you want to call it, we're going through some really big changes right now, where the way that, we feel when we take psychedelics, that really overt, explicit, in our face feeling. Seems like that world is slowly starting to bleed into what we like to believe is consensus reality. So I think the more experience we have with those states, whether it's via art, psychedelics, meditation, whatever it is, microdosing, it's beneficial for people to be exposed to that and get familiar with it. That's kind of where I've been thinking about this over the past few months, especially.
I agree. I got nothing to add to that.
Yeah,
I think that's great. I think that's correct. There's one thing I'd like to back up to, which is something you're like a point you're making about Reddit and people arguing about dosage and things like that. I think that's first off just humans being human. Yeah, humans going to be humans. But even if they're exposed to, it's like I always think about like seeing an amazing film or like being exposed to tremendous art. Like you need to be ready for that to fully experience. People still do mushrooms and go to high school parties and be like, whoa, what the fuck, I know. But which is fine, I suppose. I can't really see them as that, like fine. I don't, it's not fine, but I mean, it's also just a part of growing, you know, like some people are never gonna have that drive for understanding or beauty by being so open to experience these things as education. Some people, it's purely a way of like, drowning out noise or escapism. And I won't say that's not totally valid. It's not how I see it. I respect the thing because it's given me a lot more than that. And I think when people become open to that, they can. But like, for instance, like they're like, oh, you're doing the dose wrong and shit like that. That's so like mind-numbingly stupid to me in the sense that like, but like when you see a movie, like let's say we go watch the movie let's say we go see Black Panther or something, right? We're watching Black Panther and I can't claim to have the same experience as anybody else, but like for me, from my standpoint as an artist, being a fan of art and wanting to see like the cultural context and so like social kind of criticisms in there, I'm open to those things. Like, oh, this is such a smart movie. Right. Look how the extremists like really changed the xenophobic king who he's like the hero of the story only by way of that. The context for all superhero movies is that the main character is the hero, but is he really the hero here? And all these things. And then someone right next to me watching the same movie, same age, same education, be like, man, that was fucking crazy, huh? How that fight scene in the car exploded? Fuck yeah. Right. And it's like they took in the same thing and they didn't experience the same thing at all. Right. So even if something as powerful as mushrooms, like there's context and subtext, and your level of sophistication and openness is really what determines how potent that experience is. Yes. So people who are going to be critical or let's say in music, gearheads versus like virtuosic, beautiful composers, gearheads who get caught. Not that there's anything wrong with gearheads, but they are seeing the apparatus and vehicle for the idea as beautiful. So some people who experience escapism see that as a beautiful thing. Whereas like the taking in an obsession with knowledge and observation of the outside world is a different experience. And that again is the compulsion of the artist. Yeah. And I think you're making a good point that they're probably neither of them are less valid. I think where the validity is sometimes lost, not in terms of actually being lost, but obscured, is that when it's tinged with derisiveness or negativity, when the perspectives that you're alluding to get one better, because there's nothing wrong with gearheads, like you said, there's nothing wrong with the virtuosic. Both are equally valid. And I think what you're saying is the artist's job is to show these different perspectives and I love it, man. Let me say this. What are you doing now? Because we've gone such down the rabbit hole of philosophy for people. Their heads are probably in knots right now. Because what's funny about this is if you go to any event that Justin puts on in Yoshino in LA, you'll see that for all of the heady gymnastics that we're doing with words right now, like this stuff is just like you will feel more than anything else. You may think and you may ponder, but you will feel and it's palpable. So what are some things that you're working on right now? Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. And really quick before we move there, I do want to say one thing. Of course. You can never have to pause. I do say they're both valid. I believe that and don't believe it at the same time. Like that is also the friction of being an artist. You have to think that, and all people with all opinions, you choose your opinion because you think it's right.
Of course.
I think having a sophisticated understanding and literacy about observation is the pinnacle of what humans accomplish. And that's what makes them humans, is the fact that their observation and pattern finding and developing patterns and wanting to create more and more patterns and, so like continuously create different mutated versions of those patterns, like a giant fractal geometric shape, just as human beings. That is what makes you a human being in my mind. So I think that is a higher way of thinking than just escapism. But I will say that I'm coming from a situation, like I said, where those kinds of ideas were not shot down. And I was not coming from a place of abuse or repression. So escapism is not as important. So it's easy for me to like see that. So that's where my point lies. I do think that like getting to the sophistication point gives you a richer life.
I agree.
But it was easier to me for me to get to that richer life. I just wanted to say that. That's all.
I think that's really important too, because I also don't want it to be lost that I am probably about as opinionated of a person as you will meet. I have very specific opinions on a lot of different things. So in no way am I saying that the validity of each is that opinions are equally valid. It's just that perspectives are to be considered when looking at a particular situation. And what I would say is the root, common denominator between someone who's, let's just use the gearhead example, gearhead or virtuoso, is that there's some love, as you refer to, the love of the system in the gearhead and the love of the passion of what's coming out for the virtuoso. So I think as long as we can trace it back to that, there's always some common ground and there's always some root thing, which usually is, we can get into this a little bit, unconditional love in my mind, which is a very broad thing. But I think there's usually some common ground for all of these perspectives to be looked at or at least understood through. And that friction that you're talking about, I think is also necessary. Like, just to be clear, I mean, this is something we talk about, like, that's what we're dealing with on this plane of existence. To deny it or especially try to escape that is just a recipe for disaster, because that's what produces not only great art, but like, and I want to be very clear here. I'm not suggesting that you have to suffer greatly to produce great art. It's just
absolutely
that the
not.
friction. That's something I really want to be clear about. But that friction is what often leads to very great art. So
it's a catalyst. It's all you need to create great art is passion and focus and observation, like truthful observation. Like I said, that's beauty, truthfulness, whatever you think that is. Your truth can be a different truth or spawn other truths, but it's an honesty. Your honesty and pursuit of truths and pursuit of something like that is important. Like when you even said, what did you say about love? It was unconditional love, right?
Yes.
I don't think that's possible, but I think the pursuit of that is the most noble thing people can do, and it will create empathy, which creates understanding, which creates a more peaceful acceptance of the multitudes of reality.
Do you think unconditional love is impossible as a premise or in humanity?
I think it's impossible in the sense that it stops being useful at a certain point, because you need all emotions and judgments in a bandwidth to create beauty, joy, sadness, all these things.
Oh, the spectrum of duality. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like an unconditional love is, like I said, the thing you should shoot for. But I don't think that we are hardwired to do it. And I don't even believe in like really transcendent, like nirvana, really. I only see that as like the pursuit of. This is another Feuerbach idea. It's like it's the idea that like gods in any anthropological sense are really just the idealistic forms of what humans should be in the context of their culture. Like Jesus, unconditional love, all those things. He, like, in my mind, probably not a real guy in the sense of like the Bible.
Right.
But like the pursuit of that and the human idealization of that at that time is gorgeous, beautiful.
So let me give you a you answer, which is I both believe that the allegories and myths and ideals that are evoked in the Bible and through Jesus are real. But I also believe Jesus was a magical ascended being who had special powers. So
Okay.
I straddle both. And this is something that, especially in the Buddhist realm, is constantly looked at in a lot of different ways. And Western Buddhists, I think, have a tremendous amount of anxiety over this in some ways. So I'm someone who believes that when we talk about gods, whether it's Thor, Odin, whatever mythology we want to use, Shiva, I believe they actually exist. I believe they actually exist both as mythologies in our own psyches and our human ideals and realm. And I also believe there are realms of existence where these beings are actually there. I'm not saying they're lording over us as the way they're portrayed in the narratives we subscribe to, but the emotions or feelings or energies of those beings, if we psychologically identify with them or are aware of them, sometimes not even aware of them, have influences on our lives. This is why I think astrology, not only because I think it has some forecasting ability, resonates with a lot of people. These planets are not just known as celestial bodies because they're above us, but because they are actually known as gods and realms, and this is where they live and this is what they do. So I straddle this very weird place where I practically don't walk around thinking that, Thor is going to strike me down if I disobey. But I do believe that there's Thor somewhere and probably has some influence if I tap into that either archetypal or actual energy. So I think it's both. Like that's kind of where I sit most of the time. And the more I kind of am open to that idea, it seems to be the case. And the same thing in Buddhism. Like people ask about like the six the wheels of life, the different layers. Are they actual places? Are you going to go to hell? Is there a hell realm? Are you going to be a hungry ghost realm? Or are they just allegories for psychological states? And in speaking with, I'm happy to hear that I'm not totally insane. In speaking with a lot of the people who I respect in various traditions, they seem to allude to the fact that most of the people who did this shit pretty fucking seriously didn't dispel that as an idea. That it's not that, hey, it's as simple as these are just psychological realms that we can experience. We're not saying that they outright exist because we don't want to freak people out and make them think we're crazy, but it's worth investigating. That's kind of where I fall on it personally.
I think you're correct. I'm actually like working on a show right now that's trying to explore that exact idea.
Awesome.
Not so much with like deities and things like that, but
Sure.
the man's pursuit of wanting to be attached to nature and the animal, and that's somehow greater and more like an ubermensch that's
right.
Like approaching deism, but by way of animal as a symbol as a thing that really exists and scares people, that gives them food, and they are the food for, and also like they see that as more attached to nature and the humans, and that also leads humans to believe that they are somehow different than other animals, which they're really not.
Right.
But there is like that. They're like, if you won't mind me going off what will feel like a tangent.
No, I don't mind at all.
And it has to do with Yetis.
Cool.
Okay, so I was reading this book and also listening to podcasts and radio shows and kind of research for this next show that I'm working on. And one of them was speaking with, I can't remember, the writer is escaping me right now, but he was talking about his research and pursuit of the Yeti. Like there's people who go out and they will search for the Yeti as a thing. Like the like whole like economic structures and tourism is
it's
like
a cottage
the economy.
Industry. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's that those people. It's important that this thing is real, right?
Right.
They'll find something, they will see. It's like seeing Jesus in your soup or something.
Right.
Like they'll see this thing like, oh, this is this thing, and it creates importance, and because it creates importance for so many people. Even if, let's say that was let's say from an outsider's perspective, that's like, oh, that's just some guy's hand with a mutation, or like let's say, or like a coyote with mange or something. That's not a chupacabra of any kind.
Yeah.
But anthropologically, anthropologically, this thing exist to these people.
Right.
So they perpetuate this thing that can almost be real in the Western sense of real,
Right.
And this guy went out to go study the Yeti, and he found these prints, these famous prints, and he saw several of these prints that look exactly like a standing hominid, right?
Right.
But then while he was out there, he observed a common black bear going down a hill of snow and then going up the hill of snow using the same footprints to create traction as a way of adapting to the landscape. So like the myth of the Yeti coming from these tremendous hominid footprints are really definitely.
Right.
But also this is a split perspective on reality. It was this bear, a creature adapting to its surroundings to get food and create more traction in the snow by stepping in its own footprint, creating an unidentifiable footprint.
Right.
Just because he needs to get up this mountain in a more efficient way. And then the writer just said this in passing, that the mountain made the animal. The environment made it possible for the existence of a Yeti, even though the Yeti, as we picture it in our mind, doesn't exist. But the Yeti as a thing, as a cultural touchstone, as a way that people can feed their families, as a way that creates mystery and intrigue and inspiration for art, is very much a real thing. And it came from the simple fact that nature can create these beautiful mysteries just by adapting to itself.
That is a fascinating story. That's interesting for so many levels, especially because it does exist, right? It's real for all intents and purposes for enough people, which is, the question is, here's a real question for you. Do you think if enough people started believing that Yetis existed, we would get some verifiable proof of a Yeti? Theoretically.
I have a little bit of discomfort with that idea.
Sure.
But I also can't say one way or the other. That's kind of the point is, like, the mystery of it is beauty. And the reason why I'm concocting a show is to answer the question, or ask the question. And like, this is a big question. Everything we're saying, these are all giant questions. The questions spawn multiple answers that are just as valid and just as interesting. So that's the point of, again, the artist or philosopher.
Yeah, which I think are not mutually exclusive at all.
No, I think they come from the same DNA, or similar DNA, but they facilitate different aspects of the academic world, or whatever. So I think these are valid and interesting questions, but the question is the answer. The question is the mystery, and the mystery is the beauty.
That's the koan. That's a koan. I think you just invented for people.
Maybe.
What?
Someone said it before.
I'm sure. What else are you working on, man? Like, what? I know you're about to get married. Like, I know, like, you are doing a million things like everyone else now, but I know that also you just, as much as anyone else I stay aware of and plugged into their community in some respect, I know where your singular focus is with this stuff. Like, and I know that you're always working on this, and as you refer to it, as compulsion. So outside of the project where you're asking a very big question related to cultural memes and things like that, what else you got going on, man?
Okay, so No Wave is a big one, and through No Wave, like, I designed this large scale public art piece, like permanent public art piece in downtown LA.
Awesome.
Doing these pretty interesting, and I'll keep it pretty vague because I think it's been announced, but I'll just keep it vague anyways. But I'm designing these installations for this big music festival in the desert. We'll just leave it at that. and then working on
that's the Elvis, the famous Elvis festival in the desert, right? Yeah.
I mean, I can neither confirm nor deny what is, and I'm not entirely sure I know what you're talking about. So there's that. There's that, and then
awesome.
I'm also writing music again with my partner, Asia, or my future wife. I hate using the word partner, but she is very much.
Soon you
that.
can just say wife. Soon
My
you
wife,
can just
yeah.
say my wife.
My wife.
Dude, what kind of music do you guys make? Where do I?
Really ambient music. And that's another thing that I didn't touch on. But for a large part of my life, when I wasn't doing fine art, I was composing music for
Yeah.
commercials, and
Oh, no
I was
shit.
released several albums on record labels out here, and I had a whole different life as a musician.
Next episode, we're going to delve into that, but will you at least link me personally to what some of your stuff, or direct me in the right direction, and then we can maybe share some of it too?
Oh, yeah, sure. No problem at all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
First of all, I have a feeling that we could probably talk for like 2 days straight. Pretty fucking easily. But I want to wrap it up here with my last few questions, and just dude, thanks so much for coming on too. It's just always
it's an honor. I appreciate it.
So, what is your favorite color?
All of them.
Good. I knew in my head before I asked what you were going to say.
But that being said, I will say the most underrated color or idea of a color is, I think the most complex and overlooked color is gray, because within gray, there's every single kind of color and hue. So you have warm grays, you have subtle purpley grays, you have subtle cool grays, you have grays that make you feel a totally different way than another gray, but it's still gray. Gray doesn't need to be like an unhappy color. Gray in itself is the most complex color, or hue, or however you want, or shade, however you want to see it. It's all those things.
I love it, man.
And that's why, and I use shades of gray and a lot of my work, because I find it to be the most complex and beautiful. I guess fuck it, gray's my favorite color.
Yeah. Gray. Yeah. You're also the first person to say gray. I'm almost positive the first person to say gray, which is pretty cool.
Well, that's why it's underrated.
There you go. It's been 130 or something of these things. What is your favorite number?
We'll have a favorite series of numbers.
That works.
I have a affinity for the Fibonacci sequence, only because I would say it as a way to calm myself down and keep my brain tight before conversations. I would just start reciting it.
That's
just
super interesting.
Yeah, it's just like a little puzzle that you can. I never memorize it. I don't attempt to memorize it. I just use the sequences, like
just add it.
1, 2, 3, 5, all 8. All just, and keep going, because it focuses your mind really quickly.
That's probably the basis for most of what we experience as well. So it doesn't hurt there either.
Yeah, it's also a good symbol.
If you were to pick out of the Fibonacci sequence your favorite number in it, what would it be?
Oh, I can't do it, man.
Just
can't
pick
do it. Maybe an 8. You could say like 8, because if you turn it sideways, it's infinity.
There you go.
Untwisted, it's a circle or a 0. So
I'm gonna drag every answer out of you that I possibly can. What is your favorite animal?
Fuck, man. I've had so many in my life. God damn it. Humans.
Humans is a great answer, dude. I think
most interesting.
You've given 2. I mean, people have said 8. I hate to break it to you, but gray and human are definitely bookending to the 2 unique answers I've heard after these. Dude, Justin,
cool.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this, dude. Is there anything before we go? Where can people find out more about you? I'll have links to everything in the episode and all of that, but just if people wanted to get the quick download, where should they find you?
You can look at No Wave on Instagram. You can look up my personal stuff is Rarebit Ultra on
Spell
Instagram.
No Wave. Spell No Wave for people.
No Wave is NOHWAVE, and you can also go to nowave.co. Low Collective online, and released a bunch of albums through non-projects under Alpha Pup in Los Angeles as Rarebit. So that's where that comes from.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Love to you and your wife to be. Tell her she should come on sometime. I know we haven't met, but she seems like someone who would be good for this show.
Oh, she'd blow your mind. She's incredible.
Super excited. All right, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, man. All right,
peace.
Bye.
thanks for listening to that episode. Big shout out to Justin and No Wave and Yoshino and everything they're doing out in LA. I have a feeling we're going to be doing another event. I don't know if I'm going to brand it specifically as a mind wave, but we're going to be doing something cool out there. I can guarantee that. And what else? Thank you to Patrick Nemchek, right? Thank you, dude. You're the best. You continue to be the best. Just a fun patron. If you want to contribute on Patreon, there will be more music coming out. If you're at the $9 level, I think that's the music level. This drum machine is going wonderfully. Lots of fun. Having some space in May. Getting back to the EP. Dusting the old EP off. I have 3 tracks finished. I mean, it's not like nothing. I could release them, but I maybe just will turn it into something else. So we'll see what's going on. That's it. Lots of love to you all, and I will see you next week with a guest. Bye-bye.